Hello, hello, friends. Bonnie here for your Intuitive Eating Wisdom Wednesday live stream. Isn't that a mouthful? I'm going to just let everybody know that I am going live. So give me just a moment to do that. Let's see. It's always nice and fun when people are joining me for these lives, which is pretty much why I announce it and I create an event. Hold on. We're going to get that in the comments. So I tagged everybody so people will get the notification now that I am live. Every Wednesday, barring a vacation or some other reason, I will come live right here for your Intuitive Eating Wisdom Wednesday and share some wisdom around intuitive eating, recovering from dieting, to help you on your journey. We're going to talk about a particular topic. We're going to talk about why that's important, what your next steps might look like. So always check with us the day before to find out what time that will be on Wednesday, so you can join me live. I love it when you're here with me live because I love to interact with you. And if you want coaching from me, I really don't, and I'm actually not really allowed to give coaching in a free community if someone's not my clients, but definitely if you are here with me interacting, I will help you. So always be here live, and when you do come in and say hello, let me know who's here. Today we're going to be talking about this idea of guilt, and guilt with eating, guilt with food, and how can we stop that, right? How can we stop feeling guilty after we eat our favorite foods? And so before we do that, while Facebook is just letting people know that I'm here live, let me welcome the new members here. Let me just do a really quick intro. I am Bonnie Giller, as clearly you know from the top banner, it says my name. But what I do is I help women such as yourselves stop dieting, recover from diet culture, and really regain trust in yourself, trust with food, so eating is easy, it's enjoyable, it is nourishing to your body and your mind. So yes, nutrition is important when we're talking about intuitive eating. A very big misconception around intuitive eating is that nutrition is not important. A lot of people think, intuitive eating, eat what you want when you want, don't even think about it, and in fact, that is false. And so at the same time, we want eating to be easy. Eating is not supposed to be complicated, right? Food is supposed to be pleasured. And so I would love to ask you, and you can comment in the comments, either if you're live with me or on replay, have you ever experienced guilt after eating a certain food? And if so, what food is that? I posted that the other day just to get a little bit of a feel for people, and people said ice cream and sweets. I think someone said chocolate. If you're a dieter or if you followed other diets, more than likely, those would be labeled quote unquote junk food. And if you're following me for a while, or even if you're not, you'll know in the intuitive eating world, we do not call food junk food. We actually do not label food in that regard. Good, bad, healthy, unhealthy, can have, can't have, legal, illegal. We don't want to put labels on food like that. All food has a purpose. And when we're talking about foods that I just mentioned, ice cream, which is one of my favorites, chocolate, sweets, those have been deemed quote unquote bad for you. And in fact, when you eat those foods, at least the people who shared their viewpoints and their feelings, they often have guilt. So what really is food guilt about? What is it all about, right? It's when you experience negative feelings after you've eaten something, either a particular food, or you can even have that food guilt if you've eaten a food that you think is quote unquote, more than you should have, right? The air quotes around the should, more than what is a normal serving, a normal amount of food. People often will experience shame along with that guilt. So with that said, do you resonate with that? Have you been somebody who has felt guilt after eating certain foods that have been previously forbidden, or you've been on your diet and it's forbidden but you ate it and you felt guilty, or you have felt shame with eating certain foods? So please share in the comments. As you know, I'd love to interact with you, and that's one way that I can help you personally get support. So let me know what you think about that. So food guilt will come from multiple factors in your daily life, right? So let's just kind of lay them out and then dig into them. Mindset, the inability to see all foods as equal and labeling foods as good, bad, or these are my safe foods. So mindset is a big factor if that's how you're viewing food. A poor body image, feeling as though eating a certain food will quote unquote ruin your physical appearance, will cause you to gain weight, or you're having this worry about, well, if I eat this, how will it affect my body? And then, of course, friends and family. So food guilt can come from friends and family as well. The constant, comparison perhaps to those who are around you, what they're eating, what you should be eating. Are you comparing yourself? Here's a question. When you eat amongst others, whether it be in someone's home or in a restaurant, do you compare what you're eating to what they're eating? Do you manipulate and change what you're eating based on what someone else is eating, or what you think you should be eating, or what they expect of you to be eating? That's called performative eating. Is that something you engage in? Would love for you to interact with me in the comments. If you're here with me live and on replay, you know what to do. Hashtag replay and answer the questions. I will be tagged and come back and respond to you. So let's dig into that first factor that I mentioned, and that is labeling food as quote unquote good or bad. When you're labeling food in this manner, it leads you to feel as if you are you are morally wrong if you eat one of those quote unquote bad foods. It makes you feel as if you are quote unquote weak, that you've given into these cravings, and you've given into the foods that you've been told no, you should not eat, and you've been really brainwashed into thinking these are quote unquote bad for me, right? So labeling of food, you may have thoughts like, I ruined my eating for the whole day. So if you've eaten something that was labeled as bad or you shouldn't have had, you ate it, right? That guilt then comes in. I ruined my eating for the entire day, right? Or I can't believe I ate that. Have you ever said that to yourself? I can't believe I ate that. I just can't believe I just did that. That's what having that food guilt looks like or feels like. That's what it sounds like when you're labeling those foods and then you go ahead and eat them. And what you and I both know is that's happening when? After typically food restriction, right? We know that food restriction, what are you restricting? You're restricting the labeling of foods. And that restriction is the number one reason for binge eating or overeating, and that's in fact related to that concept of deprivation. When you put a label on a food of good or bad, it removes any idea of food neutrality, right? The concept of food neutrality is is the idea that no one food is better than another. All food is neutral. That is a goal of what we are working to achieve within intuitive eating, food neutrality. And what we're talking about when we talk about neutrality is we're not talking about nutritional, equality, right? Foods are that you want them to be emotionally equivalent, but you also recognize that no one food is better for you than the other. We're not talking about nutrition here. We're talking about that concept of emotional equivalency, if you will. The second factor that I was talking about, as far as what brings what causes that food guilt, the second piece of it, do you remember what that was? It was about how you feel about your body, a poor body image. Food guilt can arise from you having, let's just say, obsessive thoughts or unhealthy thoughts about your body, about the need to be smaller, about shrinking your body. When you're so focused on losing weight, losing weight, losing weight, we're actually doing a whole body image healing series over in one of my groups, my intuitive nutrition circle. These are the women who have worked with me through my whole body trust intuitive eating program, and they've moved into the next step, which is now healing their body image. Because let's face it, if you've been a dieter, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, if you've been a dieter, at least those who I've encountered, that typically have a poor body image, right? A negative body image brought on by the societal messages and the standards and the striving to be that, have that thin ideal body. So the pressure to meet that quote unquote ideal body type due to society's standards will alter how you see yourself in the mirror. And that leads to the ongoing dieting because you want to fit in, quote unquote, you want to fit in with society. because the messages of diet culture is, in order to get respect, in order to be worthy, you need to look a certain way, and that is so very damaging. So guilt is present for you after you eat certain foods that you have considered bad, you've been told you should not eat, right? And then there's this perception that, what has that done to my body, right? I've now ruined my body, for example. And then we end up really with a distorted perception of ourselves, and then that leads to more restriction. So I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of body dysmorphia, and if anybody is, please raise a hand, put a comment in the box, in the comment box around it. But you will often look in a mirror and see something that is not in fact truth, right? How many of you have looked in a mirror and actually see yourself and think, oh my God, I'm so big, when, it's really exaggerated, but it's really influenced by the perception and the drive that we need to look a certain way. Remind yourself that all bodies are quote unquote good bodies, right? Like, how boring would this world be if we all looked the same? By the way, I just posted on my Facebook profile. You may want to take a look at that after this live stream. And if we're not friends, request to be Facebook friends with me. But I did just post a picture of me feeding my grandson last night, and the joy, the joy. Once I've given up dieting and I changed my mindset, I had so much space to really enjoy what is truly important in life, right? Without the worrying about the body and the counting calories and the documentation and the tracking. There's so much there, so much that you could do. I would love to hear, what would you do with your life? What would you be able to do? What would you be able to enjoy if you weren't so worried about your weight, your body, and there wasn't so much focus on your eating? Give some thought to that. What percentage of your brain space is filled with all of the food and body worry? How much of your day is spent in, what did I eat? What am I eating? What will I eat? How will it affect my body? Because once you can give that up, there's so much possibility and opportunity for you to enjoy this life that you are living. There's this concept of negative self-perception, right? So, you perceive yourself in a certain way, and generally, if you've been striving for weight loss, that is on more of the negative side and the negative self-talk. And you're therefore then continuing this labeling of food as healthy and unhealthy, all based on society. So let's just take dessert, for example. If you say, that dessert I ate was so full of sugar, it was so full of carbs, now I'm just going to get fat, or I will be 5 pounds heavier tomorrow. A very distorted, irrational thought driven by diet culture. So you really want to analyze those thoughts for yourself. The third factor we talked about when we touched on family and friends and its influence on the food guilt is this concept of food shaming. So again, I'd love to hear your experiences with this, right? So comments or critiques from others about, what is on your plate, what are you eating, what you should be eating or shouldn't be eating, or should you be eating that, right? Those types of questions, right? Those will create this sense of food guilt for you, as well as you then questioning, maybe I shouldn't have eaten this. Maybe I shouldn't be eating this. Maybe my portion is too large. Maybe and on and on and on and on, right? Questioning yourself because of the food shaming that is going on. I would say there are certain well-meaning people in our lives that might do that. I don't know that you are encountering people that totally mean harm by you, but recognize that they too are sucked in this diet culture. And they may not know better. And you may have explained it to them, but it just doesn't matter. They still are in there. This is their lane and this is their message to you. But that whole idea of you're going to eat that or you're going to eat all of that can be extremely damaging and give you so much food guilt. So why do we really care about this? Like, why are we even talking about this, right? Because having food guilt is extremely harmful to both your body and to your mind. There are many physical impacts from having food guilt. Example, you have a lot of this guilt you're holding around what you're eating or how much you're eating, and then you therefore ignore your hunger signals because I don't trust my body and I can't trust the signals that I have. And then you go into obviously the dieting and then finding this diet, this diet, this diet, and it's one diet to the next until you try to get the goals that you're looking for, all driven by this food guilt. And well, we know there's a lot of physical harm by going on and off diets. We also know that dieting has a very high failure rate. Now, when I speak dieting, I am speaking intentionally restricting your intake for the purpose of intentional weight loss. That is dieting, and that will, without a shadow of a doubt, I've seen it time and time again. The literature shows this. 95 to 97% of people in that way that I just described, losing weight, will regain that weight. It is rarely sustainable. And again, I always like to say, you may know that person who has lost weight through dieting and kept it off. And I'm not going to say there aren't any people like that, but what I will say is that 3 to 5% of those individuals will have some disordered eating habits and behaviors. This just came up the other day. I was having this conversation with somebody, and she shared that with me. Yeah, but I know this person who, and I said, and what is her exercise habits like? And what are her eating habits like? And then after we talked a lot about that, she recognized that this woman does not have peace with food and her body. Even though she lost this weight on this diet, she is not living a full life because of it. And food guilt has a lot to do with it, right? So if you have food guilt, if you're given the message that, you quote unquote shouldn't have eaten a certain thing, and then you feel as if I'm going to say a horrible word, you feel as if you've cheated, right? It just creates a greater obsession over food, and will lead to eating disorders, disordered eating, poor self-esteem. So we've got physical impacts on your health. Why? Because when you yo-yo diet and you're on and off, you actually have poorer health outcomes. And I know that sounds crazy because the message is go on a diet to improve your health. But what we see is that the constant on and off and the weight cycling is going to give you a worse outcome for your health, poorer heart health, blood sugar swings, and so much more. And then we have the concept, the feeling, you taking on a belief that I don't have control, quote unquote, control over my food. And what does that do? Now your belief in yourself goes down, right? It just goes down, and then the dominoes end up falling, right? You fall into this constant binge restrict cycle. And then what you end up seeing is your physical health indicators. So your cholesterol, your blood pressure, your blood sugar. Now we see the up and down on those as well. So, those are some of the physical impacts. And then, of course, the mental health impacts of that food guilt is feeling that shame, feeling guilty and feeling shame after you eat what you would consider, quote unquote, a cheat food. And that's all due to fear of weight gain, right? And it in and of itself, that shame and that guilt in and of itself is going to drive some complications, right? So perhaps you mentally go into a place where, oh my God, I need to exercise. I need to burn off the calories I just ate. And then you get into this place of over exercising and burn out. And there are unfortunately, physical effects of that as well. Negative, injuries and such, because you're not allowing yourself to rest because you're compensating for what you've eaten by exercising. It's part of disordered eating. That concept of extreme food restriction, where you then what you're making up today for what you ate yesterday, very unhealthy, again, physically but mentally as well. It's exhausting to the brain, right? And then the idea then that what happens is you're restricting your food, and then all of a sudden these cravings intensify, and then you're hyper fixated on these. No, but I can't have it, because you'll go back to what we talked before. We're labeling it, right? And now I can't, and then bam, you have it, and now you overdo it. You binge eat because of what we talked about, right? Restriction, number one predictor for binge eating, and now the guilt comes again, and then the shame, and this cycle continues. So this whole journey of intuitive eating can absolutely help this guilt disappear, for lack of a better way to say that, because you are, number one, unlearning so much damage that dieting has caused you, right? All of the lessons of dieting, you're going to be unlearning. I was just thinking about this client I spoke with this morning, and we were talking about something around carbs, and she says, yeah, but Weight Watchers says this. And so it's clear that we've got a lot of unlearning to do. And all you need to do is say, yes, I do. I have a lot of unlearning to do, and that's okay, because everything I've learned from diet culture has only caused me harm, right? honoring your body's signals, your hunger signals, your fullness signals, right? Intuitive eating allows you to honor the cues you have. And yes, even cravings. We all have cravings. Oftentimes they're physiological cravings, right? Now we also have emotional cravings. We learn how to manage those as well. But it's the idea of moving past this labeling of foods as good, bad, healthy, unhealthy, should haves and shouldn't haves, and focusing on satisfaction. What foods are providing satisfaction, and how does that food feel in my body? That whole concept of feel, right? How does it feel when I eat said food or this amount of that food? You get to make those decisions, nobody else. It's also intuitive eating also like really opens up this pathway in front of you for you to understand that health could look different for everybody. Health does look different for everybody, right? By eating intuitively, you will really notice that mindset shift that happens, and you'll move away from this idea that of you constantly needing to look thinner, smaller, be smaller, and instead you'll be able to focus on your health without that connection to weight. That's the thing. Like, diet culture has so hijacked the word health and healthy to be synonymous with losing weight or weight loss. And so once we can really make that mindset shift, it's a beautiful thing, because I think, at least for me and my clientele, and I'm hoping for many of you, health is a value, and that's pretty much why you're on this journey, except for the fact that all the messages you've received from even doctors, right, and certainly society has been, well, if you want to be healthy, you need to lose weight. Well, that has never worked. Focusing on weight loss has never worked to improve your health. As I said before, it only has hurt. So when you really embrace the concepts of intuitive eating and really take this journey and do this journey very seriously and engage with this journey, you will see this tremendous mindset shift around what health looks like for you. And that might look different from somebody else. And that is a-okay. Um, and just acknowledge, here's another, just a final thought I want to share, is when you're embracing the concept of intuitive eating, you're really giving yourself full permission to eat, all foods intuitively, right? So when you do that, there is no guilt, there is no shame, okay? That begins to fade away. And so when and again, I'll go back to the thread I posted yesterday. What foods do you eat that bring you guilt? And some people said ice cream and sweets and chocolate. So what if, can you just have visualized, and what if you were able to eat those foods in a way that felt good for you in your body and didn't bring guilt and shame? What does that do for you? What does that do for you? I want you to enjoy your food. I want eating, as I said before, to be easy, uncomplicated, enjoyable, and nourishing. And nourishing to your physical body, but also to your mental health, right? To your mindset. Because what you've been doing till now with food has not been anything, not nowhere near nourishing in terms of nourishment to your soul, right? And certainly your mind. So I hope this has brought some clarity to you around food guilt and shame, and where that comes from and why that happens, and how intuitive eating can help you break free of that and really truly enjoy the foods that you're eating, the foods that you love, without guilt. I also want to say that intuitive eating is not just see it, want it, eat it. Intuitive eating very much encourages you to stop and to think and to ask yourself questions. So being able to learn to do that for yourself without the chirping of the diet mentality is absolutely key, and is why that is the number one step that I take my clients through. I want to make sure everybody here in my group is familiar with, or is, I should say, aware. That's a better word. I want to make sure you're all aware that I have one spot left in my intuitive eating coaching program for the month of June. The other spots have been kind of taken up. But if you are even a little bit curious about how I can help you actually learn intuitive eating, integrate it into your life, unlearn all of the messages you have. If you've been trying this for a while and you're just, back and forth, or you're brand new to it, but you really don't want to waste time, you want to get it going, just send me a DM or post a comment below, and we will get on a quick call and we'll figure it out. If it's good for you, great. If it's not a fit for you, I will be sure to tell you that also and provide other resources for you. So all you need to do is comment below the video or send me a DM. It's one spot left. We are at the 28th, so we have 3 days left, and I'm sure that spot will be filled. So even if you're a bit curious, I would say reach out to me. All right. I will see you back here next Wednesday for another Intuitive Eating Wisdom Wednesday live stream. In the meantime, this is your group to post questions, thoughts. So go for it, because everybody else here is also on this journey to look and help and support you. All right. If you tag me in a comment, I will be sure to come back. And if you're on replay, thank you for watching live. Thank you for watching on replay. And definitely post your thoughts and questions below, because I just love it. I'll talk to you all real soon. You have an amazing rest of your Wednesday.